Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started here. Welcome to our workshop. We have one item on our workshop today. It's around the 2021 grant summary and 2022 grant opportunity. And we have our Public Works Director, Chad, going to kick this off for us. Chad?
Thank you, Council President. Council, thanks for having us. Normally, we're in a hurry to go to a second item. We're the only show tonight, but we will try and keep it short and interesting as much as we can. In general, when we give these presentations, we like to have staff do it. I like to stay out of the way and let them do their thing. But grants really takes a team, and we've been working on this as a team for quite a number of years. I think this is going to be one of those nights where I kind of miss the old setup with the table out front where we could sit there and just kind of take turns providing some information. I'll let Rob take the majority of the time and give the full presentation, but Kelly Peterson and I will be here for comments. Also might jump up from time to time to give a comment here or there or fill in as needed on questions, because it really is a very complex situation applying for and then getting the grants. So just want to give a little recap on where we've been and then where we're going in 2022.
Okay.
With that, I'll let Rob keep going.
Thanks, Chad.
Good evening, Council President Boyce, members of the Council. Rob Brown, Transportation Engineering Manager, Public Works. Like Chad said, the grants that we apply for and the work that we do is a team effort. It's our team in transportation, it's the design team, it is our leadership in Public Works. It takes all of us to get these done. And before I start, I do want to recognize April Delchamps, although she's no longer with the city. April did a tremendous amount of work last year and previous years to get us where we are and get us in a good position for grants. So with that, I'd like to get started. Okay. So three sections tonight. We'll go over the previous year's grants. There's been some updates, then the summary of the 2021 grant requests that we made and some potential grant opportunities for this coming year, 2022. So the first update to previous grant is the 2018 Puget Sound Regional Council Preservation Set-Aside. Just as a quick recap, the Puget Sound Regional Council, or Psrc, is our metropolitan planning organization, and they cover King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap counties. That's our metro area. For the 2018 Psrc Preservation Set-Aside, we received funding for the 212th Street pavement rehabilitation from 72nd to 84th. And the project was awarded $1.4 million in 2018. And the Psrc had additional funds in 2021, and they had a project that was funded through us. And they were looking for ways to use that money before they had to either give it back to the state or it would go back to the federal government. So they allocated the money to us. And so this reduced our construction match from $1.16 million to $460,000.
My first jump in, just very briefly, this is one of the places where we really have a lot of benefit in doing a lot of our own engineering as opposed to using consulting firms. We use a fair number of consulting firms when we need help in some specialty areas, but in general, for our civil engineering and road work, we like to do the work in-house. In this case, we got ahead of the curve, got our project designed and ready to go. And the state came and said, hey, some other agencies are slow. We don't think that they can spend the money fast enough. Can you take additional money? So initially we had a $1.4 million grant with a $1.4 million match. And they came and said, can you take another $700,000? And we said, you bet. So lesson number one for us with grants, be ready. So there are a couple of things I want to make as kind of themes for tonight. Why we do what we do. That one was a big, internally when we talked a lot about it. We've talked for years about being ready, but this was a prime case for staff. It was like, hey, look, we just got $700,000 extra because we were ready to go. So very important. Also in this one, if people have been out there, the intersection of 84th and 212th, this ended right at the intersection. So we need to pave the section from 212th to 196th. 2 years before this, we did the section from 196th to 180th. So we've gotten grants for each of these sections. We paved the section of East Valley Highway up to 212th back in 2010 when we widened the East Valley Highway section from 167 all the way to 212th. And then we paved 212th from 84th all the way over to the freeway, I think in 2015. So folks who go through there a lot will notice the intersection is rough, and just north of the intersection has been really rough. We're going to be patching those in the spring until we get the grant to do the rest of the work.
Great. Thanks, Chad. So as Chad mentioned, the project was constructed this past year, and this picture on the right shows the finished product after the final striping. Next grant I'd like to talk about is the 2020 Psrc Regional Competition and the 76th Avenue Road Raising North Segment project. This project was ranked 6th on the contingency list, and funding became available. So, city funds are being used for design and right-of-way, but $3.48 million was awarded for construction. So, this picture on the right here shows, sorry, next slide, there we go. Picture on the right there shows the middle segment that was recently completed. So this project is currently scheduled for construction in 2023. Then we move to the 2020 Psrc King County larger jurisdiction competition and the South 228th Street corridor, 218th and 98th Avenue from 94th to 216th. That's a big mouthful, but you can see that location there on the slide. This is the next phase of the 228th corridor. So this project was ranked 9th on the contingency list, and last year we were awarded $4.9 million.
Interrupt again. So these last two, as Rob noted, we were 6th and 9th on the contingency list. That means, so I take part, Kelly Peterson took part in past years in scoring projects regionally in the federal competitions or the competitions for federal money, as Rob will explain later. It goes through a regional competition, also through the countywide competition. And it's just the way the money comes into the state. It's then given to Psrc, and then the way Psrc breaks up how they score the projects. And then we call it scoring in the money, where you get a really high score on your project and you are awarded money. And then projects that don't score quite as highly are put on the contingency list. So these last two projects were 6th and 9th. There's a pretty good chance you're not going to get money in a typical year being that far down on the contingency list. However, again, we'd pushed far enough and fast enough on these projects internally with B&O funding in order to pay for the design of the projects, that they came back and said, hey, we're having trouble getting the money spent regionally. Can you obligate money on these two projects? So that was $3.48 million on 76th Avenue, the north segment, and then $4.915 million. And our being able to say we're ready meant the money came to us. So that was really another big example. Again, internally we talk about it, let's be ready to go. So that was part of the planning ahead and trying to make sure we were poised and ready to get the money.
Thanks, Chad. As Chad mentioned, so this project is funded and is currently under design. Construction is expected to begin in late 2024, early 2025. The 2020 Psrc Non-Motorized set-aside. This is the Meeker and 64th Avenue South intersection. This is part of the Meet Me on Meeker corridor. This project was ranked 5th on the non-motorized contingency list. We'd submitted a grant request for $2.13 million with a $334,000 local match. And the Psrc awarded us $236,667 for design. As Chad mentioned before, because we'd done some preliminary work and we had a project that could accept the money. So, design is scheduled to be completed this summer, and we are looking for construction funding. And then the picture we're looking at here on the right side is the intersection of 64th and Meeker.
Again, wishing I had the table, so I'll just keep interrupting. 5th on the contingency list. This time around, we were able to obligate the design funds. So I think we're at 90%, Kelly, 90% designed right now. Again, designed in-house. So what we're trying to do is be prepared so that if in the spring they have additional contingency money available and they ask who's ready, we'll say our design's done, we're ready to go. We'll take the money and then we'll get the construction money and we can build it. We would then, of course, before that happened, we'd have to come back to council and say, we've got the federal money, we've been offered the federal money, we'll need to use a combination of city funds for match. Is it okay if we move ahead? But we're trying to get ourselves in position to do that.
And then just a quick summary of the updates to the previous year's grants. There were 4 projects that were awarded funds. The city was awarded $9,332,347 with city matching funds of $7,282,653. So that was really quite a good year for us. Again, not typical, but we're happy to accept those. So next we'll move on to the summary of the 2021 grant requests. 2021, so TIB, Transportation Improvement Board, they have an urban arterial program. This project is Reith Road from South 253rd Street to Lake Fenwick Road. This project will construct compact roundabouts at Reith Road, on Reith Road at 253rd and at Lake Fenwick Road. And in between those, going up the hill, there'll be a road diet that will add protected bike lanes. This is Tmp Project P55. Our grant request was $1.595 million with about $900,000 in local match for design and construction. And we were awarded the amount we requested of $1.595 million. The design is scheduled to be completed in early 2023, and construction is expected to begin in the summer of 2023. So the picture you're looking at here, this is Reith Road looking east at the intersection of 253rd. And so this is where we'll have a new compact roundabout and the beginning of our bike lanes going down the hill. 2021 TIB Urban Sidewalk Program. Russell Road, Hogan Park frontage. This is a great project. This project will construct a curb gutter and an 8-foot wide sidewalk along the east side of Russell Road along the Hogan Park frontage. This is project P56 in the Transportation Master Plan. Our grant request is for $465,000 with $163,380 local match, which we were awarded the full amount. Design is underway and construction is expected to begin in the summer of 2023, so next summer. And the picture you're looking at here, this is the southern driveway of Hogan Park looking north towards 240th. Companion project in the same grant, 2021 TIB Urban Sidewalk Program, is sidewalk on Russell Road from Lakeside Boulevard. Sorry, it's on 240th from Russell Road to Lakeside Boulevard. So this is the area in front of the city shops. And this project will construct curb gutter and a 5-foot sidewalk. Sorry, 5-foot shoulder and 5-foot sidewalk on the south side of 240th. And this will complete the sidewalk gap between Russell Road and the residential areas and commercial areas to the east. And so this will connect all those residential areas to the Green River Trail and to Hogan Park. The grant request was for $312,000 with approximately $110,000 local match, and we were awarded the full amount. And this is a companion project to the Hogan Park frontage project. So it is also beginning design with construction expected in the summer of 2023.
So we were very excited on the TIB this year. We applied for 3 grants and got 3, which I don't remember happening in the 22 years I've been here. We've applied for grants in the past and gotten 1 or sometimes none, maybe 2, but not 3 out of 3. And these are 3 grants that we're very excited about, as Rob pointed out. In the grand scheme of things, folks might ask, well, what are you doing here? When you look at, as we're piecing these together, you're talking about getting from kind of the center of the valley along James Street down Russell Road. We have another section left between Hogan Park and Meeker that we think would be really good for a federal grant application, because it's an area next to a mobile home park and an apartment complex. So we want to try and finish that on another round, future round. And we'd be able to have a sidewalk through that whole area down to the river, because we just finished the section along the golf course driving range as part of the driving range project, and the other section of Meeker. So in other words, we'd have sidewalk from the river going north up in the center of the valley, but also then along Meeker from the river back all the way to downtown. So just trying to stair step that whole area and get it put together. And then the project on Reith Road had a number of incidents with pretty significant accidents, fatality up there not too long ago. So getting that on a road diet and then connecting the sidewalks all the way up and around the corner there would be very helpful.
Just summary sheet for the TIB sidewalk grant on Russell Road. And the picture we're looking at here is at the west end of 240, looking towards the east. This is looking right along the front of the shops. Moving on to the 2021 Washed Out Local Bridge Program, the Meeker Street Bridge over the Green River. This will be the first of 2 projects on this bridge. The first project is a bridge deck rehabilitation. A bridge deck is a driving surface, so the concrete roadway that you can see there in the picture. The grant request was for $1.22 million with a local match of approximately $19,000. And we were awarded the state actually awarded us $1.484 million, so above what we asked for. So, this project is currently, no, sorry, I don't have that information. Design starting soon. Sorry.
Actually, Councilmember Thomas asked about this when we brought it back in the fall, probably September timeframe. We need to put in for permits on this. This is one of these where they're going to have to put a big diaper over the bridge before we repaint it, because this is, and Rob will go over this next. We've got the deck rehabilitation and then the repainting of the bridge. It's going to be quite the project. We'll end up having to close the street for a number of months. So we have to get design done, the permitting done, and then work with the community to start talking about what that's going to look like as everybody tries to go around. We're hoping part of it will be another phase in getting people used to having Meeker Street as more of a walking and commercial corridor as opposed to a through street. So in other words, hey folks, please go over and use Veterans and use 516 to access the West Hill and use Meeker for making trips and stopping at the store.
Our next project is also on the Meeker Street Bridge. As Chad mentioned, we applied for a grant from WashDOT to paint the bridge. Our grant request was $3 million, which is the maximum allowed under the grant, with a $238,000 local match, and we were awarded that $3 million. So,
When will we start painting it? Are we waiting to I'm assuming the weather get nice? It'll happen in 2022?
it's going to take a little bit of time. As Chad mentioned, there's a lot of environmental permits because we're doing work over the river, so it will probably be a couple of years.
The grant gives us a lot of leeway. We're going to try and get it done in 23, but that's assuming we get the permits. There's been a lot of holdups on federal permits for state grants right now. They've been getting pushback at the state level from the federal resource agencies that review fisheries permits, and it's this is something that's been happening just over the last about 5 or 6 months. That a number of projects that have been put in what's called a no effects letter, which says our project will have no net effect on fisheries. They've been returning those and wanting more analysis done. So that ends up potentially taking another year to year and a half of review time. So we're feverishly working through. We have a meeting, in fact, tomorrow on a different grant. We're trying to find out if we can get through our regular door and get a grant going forward. So we're going to try our darndest to get it done in 2023. We'll see what happens.
Same color, I'm guessing. Say again?
Actually, that's up for discussion.
Oh.
We could always change the color. It doesn't have to be Washington gray or, I don't know, Meeker green. I don't know what that color even is.
I like Councilmember Sapwinner jacket, so yeah, maybe I'll do that.
Okay. Sorry. So we also applied for a WashDOT local bridge program grant for the 212th Street Bridge over the Green River. This project would replace the expansion joints and flexible seals in the bridge. Our grant request was just over $1 million with a $30 million match, but unfortunately this project was not selected for funding last year. 2021 WashDOT Safe Routes to Schools program. So what we're showing here, and I'll talk about this in a second, these are the 14 locations where we applied for funding to install additional elementary school zone flashing beacons. So as I mentioned, this project would have installed 14 flashing beacons around the city. Many of these locations are on roads that intersect existing school zones. So we have beacons on the main road, but there are intersecting side streets that don't have flashing beacons, and so we were looking for some grant money to install some additional beacons. The grant request was for $310,000 with a $20,000 local match. And this project was not selected for funding. So. Also, 2021 Safe Routes to School program, we applied for a grant for make improvements at the intersection of James Street and 94th Avenue. This is on the walk route for both East Hill Elementary and Mill Creek Middle School. This project would have made non-motorized improvements to the intersection, as well as adding left turn pockets to northbound and southbound 94th Avenue. The washed out Safe Routes to School grants, there is the grant actually favors locations that have a documented crash history. This location was identified in our local road safety plan, but we were unfortunately not selected for funding this time. So in this picture is of the intersection looking north along 94th.
Rob put that the right way. They look for a place with a documented crash history, which obviously in a school zone we don't want to see. So modestly, Rob didn't want to toot his own horn, but Rob and Eric Preston, traffic engineer, look at areas where we can put in improvements to try and prevent an accident where, I mean, you could have an accident anywhere, but there are certain places where we think we could put in improvements to really reduce the potential for one. But we've heard pretty clearly, hey, if you don't have an accident problem, you're probably not going to get money. And that's just a case of the amount of funding available versus the need statewide. It's hard for us to hear, it's hard for us to repeat, but we'll continue to look for ways to get these things done where we think it's the right thing to do.
Okay, the 2021 WashDOT Pedestrian and Bicycle Program. These are 4 locations where we chose or applied for funding to install enhanced pedestrian crossings. These 4 locations, and these also came out of funding, or sorry, the safety analysis that Eric Preston did for us. So this project will install enhanced pedestrian crossings at the following locations, and so I'll just read these. 104th between 256th and 260th, that's near the taco time. 240th between 104th and 108th, near the post office. Central Avenue between George and Woodford, that's near the Camp Memorial Park. And then Central Avenue between Novak and Woodford. And that's in an area where there's some high-density housing on the east side and bus stops. So we requested a little over $1.1 million with a $20,000 local match, and we were awarded the full amount. So, great news for Kent. Also part of the 2021 WashDOT Ped and Bike Program, we applied for money for Meeker Street, the Meeker corridor from 64th to Washington Avenue for design funding. And this would have funded the design of the Meet Me on Meeker improvements for the entire segment between 64th and Washington Avenue. That would include the sections along the Kent Elementary frontage, which you'll hear a lot about this afternoon, and Fast Food Row. Grant request is for $580,000 with a $20,000 match, but this project was not selected for funding this time. And another WashDOT Ped and Bike grant request we made was for 108th Avenue Southeast at the Panther Lake Library for a pedestrian crossing. Our grant request is for $610,000 with a local match, and this project was not selected for funding. So what we were proposing was a pedestrian hybrid beacon. The picture on the right is the one that's on West Valley Highway at the Kent Regional Trails crossing, and that's similar to what we would be proposing for the Panther Lake Library crossing.
Some accidents or near misses or something in that area last year?
There are crashes, and it depends, but it is dependent on. It's a polite way to say this. It is in some aspects it's good that we don't get these grants because that means that we don't have a serious or severe accident problem that other agencies do. But at the same time, it's also not good for us because we do know that there are issues and risks. But the way the safety programs work with the state is it has to be a documented crash history. So near misses and risk under this category do not score very well.
This is a location, though, that Rob's been working on for, was that 3 or 4 years ago? We visited with the group up there. It was pre-pandemic. 2019, yeah, before the pandemic. But this is a location that we really want to see this improvement. So we're going to look at every avenue to try and get a grant to help get it done.
In our final location for the WashDOT Ped and Bike Pedestrian and Bicycle Program grant. This is the Russell Road segment that Chad was talking about between Meeker and Hogan Park. And so this project would construct a 5-foot planter strip and a 5-foot sidewalk on the east side of Russell Road. Our grant request was for $565,000 with a $20,000 match, but we were not selected for funding. But I did want to mention the picture on the right. This is an interesting picture. The person you see standing there in the vest with the phone in his hand is our WashDOT local programs engineer from the Northwest region. And we took this picture during our site visit when they came. This was during COVID, so it was a virtual site distance. They had one person come with a phone and basically stream the whole thing to the rest of the WashDOT group. And while we were out there talking about this project, 2 people came walking down the street. So we thought this would help us out, but we're still looking for funding for this one.
So when it's not funded for 2021, can you take it back 2022, 2023? The process allow you to do that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We select the projects. We, the city, you, the council, we select the projects that we apply for. If we don't get funding in this round, we can apply for funding and there's also other grant opportunities.
And in case you're wondering, no, we're not above using that picture when we apply for it the second time around.
Okay, moving on to the 2021 WashDOT Rail and Highway Crossing Program. So we submitted a grant application to install additional pedestrian gates at the Bnsf crossing of Smith Street. This is the south end of Kent Station. Our request was for $315,000 to install additional pedestrian gates. This crossing currently has pedestrian gates in the northeast and southwest corners. These are in the same direction of traffic where you have the vehicle gates. And we put this application in to get money that we would pass through to Bnsf to design and install the gates in the opposite quadrant. So we had pedestrian gates in all 4 quadrants of the crossing. I did want to mention this is not part of the quiet zone. This was a safety project, pedestrian safety project that we were seeking money for. We put in the application. We were told by WashDOT that we scored well. We were above the funding line that Chad mentioned, that we were in the money. And so we talked to WashDOT and Bnsf again about the project, and Bnsf came back with an updated estimate of $650,000, so $300,000 above their original estimate that we put in our grant application. And that additional funding was not available from WashDOT and the granting agency.
Madam Mayor, got some comments?
Thank you. So Rob explained this is not a part of the quiet zone, but I did want to just provide council with a quick update. We've been having our conversations going over our legislative agenda with all of our legislators over the last few weeks, talking about the quiet zone in particular. It's been a good opportunity for us to sort of educate them on the idea that we're looking for density in the downtown. We're looking to draw people in, and the trains are obviously a significant impediment to that. And I'm cautiously optimistic. I think there's a good plan, and we have support from a majority of our legislators to really look at possible funding from the state on the quiet zone. So I felt like that was maybe a good spot to slip that in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We are hopeful that comes through, and then there will be kind of a note of caution when we work with the railroads and we sign the agreements with them. It's kind of, their way or the highway or the railroad. You get railroaded. We say internally, we're getting railroaded again. And sorry, I mean, I'm sure BNSF's listening right now, but we got an estimate, as Rob pointed out, of $315,000, and then it's like, oh, hey, we sharpen our pencil and it's double plus what we come up with. So we're always a little bit. We like working with the railroad as far as working with somebody else, but it can be difficult sometimes because they tend not to be bound to those same budgetary constraints that we are when they're spending our money. So it can be difficult.
And just a quick summary page of the grant funding that we've talked about so far. So we requested grant funds, in 2021, we requested grant funds for a total of 13 projects. Total requested amount was $12,152,256 with a city match of about $1.6 million. Out of that, we were awarded funds for 6 projects for a total of $8,019,908 with a city match of $1,448,435. If you consider that along with the adjustments to the previous year's grants that we talked about in the first section, the total awards this year was $17,352,255, which is, again, we've mentioned this is an abnormal year, but the cities, we've set ourselves up to take advantage of these opportunities. So I want to point that out. And again, April was a big part of this. She and our design team, and Chad and Kelly, there were a bunch of people that put a lot of effort into getting this, and this has been a great grant year for us. So, all right, I would now like to move on to the grant opportunities for 2022. Psrc has a grant program called the Transportation Alternatives Program, and for this program, we applied for the Meeker and 64th intersection and the Kent Elementary frontage as part of the Meet Me on Meeker project. Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP, is a federal funding for community-based transportation improvements. We submitted an application for this project in December, and our request was for about $1.65 million, the local match of just over $250,000. Psrc is currently evaluating the grant applications, and they will move those on to the Transportation Policy Board, which will make its recommendations on March 10th. And then the Psrc Executive Board will approve funding on March 24th. So that's a long way of saying on March 24th, we'll find out if we got this grant or not. So in the picture you're looking at here, this is the Kent Elementary frontage on the south side of Meeker looking to the west. 2022 TAB Complete Streets. This is a little different type of grant. The Complete Streets grant is available to agencies that have an adopted Complete Streets ordinance. The local agencies are nominated through a list that TIB has developed of state agencies and nonprofit organizations that then nominate the local agencies based on our Complete Streets policy. The TIB then evaluates those nominations and chooses the agencies and the proposed funding levels for those agencies. So basically, we have been nominated. We're not sure who, but we've been nominated by one of the agencies. We have not yet heard from TIB. So if TIB believes that we are one of those agencies that they would like to give funds to, they will come back to us with different funding levels and say, what can you build for X, Y, and Z amount of dollars? And we give those projects back to them, and then they go through their selection process based on their available funds and the project merits. So. We should know this later this month if we've been selected by TIB to move forward in that process. Okay, moving on to Puget Sound Regional Council grants. They have a regional competition and a larger jurisdiction. These are 2 similar grant opportunities. The funds come from the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Authority, and so all those federal requirements with federal money come along with those things. The 2022 grant applications that will be submitted this year will be awarded funding in 2025, and funding will be available in 2026. So we're about 4 years out from that funding. All the Psrc projects have a minimum match of 13.5%. And this year's evaluation framework does place more emphasis on equity and safety. So that is a change we are seeing through most of the grant competitions. Psrc regional competition. The projects must be in a regional growth center, manufacturing center, or a corridor serving those. And so the map on the right shows our arterial streets, and those are the streets that would serve those corridors. And the one I'll come to, actually, I'll just move to that now. This shows our, the gray area shows our manufacturing and industrial center, or MIC. And then the yellow area in the center, the downtown, that is our regional growth area.
These are very important for our scoring, and I want to point out that, so as Rob said, the kind of beige area is the regional growth center, and then the darker or gray area is the manufacturing and industrial center. So we're able to get better scores because we have one of each in Kent, which other than Seattle, it's pretty rare to have one of each in many of the jurisdictions around Puget Sound. So that's helpful to us. Big shout out to Haley Bonsteel and Daniel Bootstick working with April Delchamps. They expanded the area of the Manufacturing Industrial Center during a process where they'd asked for a request to expand it. Not a lot of other cities got expanded areas. We did, so it expands where we can ask for funds, particularly for preservation in the Manufacturing Industrial Center. So we're excited about that.
Okay, go back to this. Let's continue on. The streets need to be federally functionally classified. It's a fancy way of saying they need to be busy streets, and those are the ones that are shown here on the map. A number of projects for this grant competition are allocated by regional area. Move on. The regional competition. These are this map shows 4 potential projects for this grant opportunity. So 216th, 98th, the 108th. That is the next phase of the 228th corridor. Meeker Street, 64th and Kent Elementary frontage, which we've spoken about. Meeker Streets, Kent Elementary to Washington Avenue, which would be the next segment to the east of the Meet Me on Meeker. Meeker Street at Lincoln Avenue and to the Union Pacific. That's a section of the Meeker improvement. And then the intersection of Meeker Street and Lincoln Avenue.
We can walk through these. This is one of the more interactive parts of the presentation, and we've been trying to do a good job of coming to council before we apply for these grants, so that not only are we talking about the locations where we think we could get money for a grant, but also discussing the cost to the city and where the match should come from before we even apply for it. So we're not showing up and surprising council with a, hey, we got this grant, now we need a lot of money to match it. We want to make sure everybody's on board before we go forward. That said, you'll notice the concentration of money on Meeker Street. Part of that is obviously the focus we all have on Meeker Street and getting Meeker Street further along than it was 5 years ago. I think the progress out there is I've been surprised, and surprised many of us. It's really coming on very quickly. It's also, because of its location and the way transit moves through there, it helps us score for those federal grants. So we think we have a good shot at getting money on Meeker, and that's why we're asking for the money on Meeker Street. So between the local road safety plan and the transportation master plan, we have a prioritization of projects. We try and follow that as much as possible. But we also have to go through and look at the grant criteria and make sure that we're matching up where our prioritized projects meet the criteria that get you scored in the money. In other words, we could have a project that we all really like that's on the West Hill, that's outside of any of those regional areas. We're not going to get money, we won't score out there. So we just try and get those projects that are the best fit given all the constraints.
In other words, you're trying to play within the rules so we can maximize the dollar amount, is what I'm hearing. So you got the roundabout. That's the one roundabout you're talking about that we have here? That next to the roundabout and Meeker improvement?
Yeah, that's actually a proposed, and do we have graphic coming up?
We do.
We'll do a graphic of it, but this is right out by the bridge where we put the lighting in underneath Meeker, where Meeker overpass 167, just on the east.
Okay.
So again, 4 possible projects for the PSRC regional competition. I guess at this point I'd ask if the council has any feedback on any or all of these projects.
Yeah, looks good. Are we okay, council members, with the project? Everybody nodding their head. Yep. Okay. And even Brenda nodding her head. Thank you, Councilmember Fincher.
Okay. Then we move on to the PSRC larger jurisdiction competition. Very similar criteria. Applies to cities with a population over 15,000. As we mentioned before, it needs to be in a regional growth center or a corridor serving the regional growth center. And we were allowed to submit multiple applications. So these should look familiar. Because the criteria are very similar, the same projects would be potential projects for those criteria. And then this graphic here on the right does show the intersection of the proposed or potential roundabouts. Excuse me. Potential roundabout at Lincoln and Meeker. So as I'm sure everybody's aware, oftentimes we have, I know I have some challenges when I'm trying to go westbound on Meeker and get onto, or go through the intersection and continue on the Meeker. This would do several things. One, it would make that movement easier for all of us. This would also be a nice transition from Meeker going under the freeway and the section to the west to the section to the east, which will become more of downtown, especially when the Naden property redevelops. And it'd also make it easier for pedestrians to cross the street because it would come with our full suite of pedestrian improvements like we have over at the Fort Willis Roundabout. So.
That'd be nice.
This is a real engineer's kind of graphic here. If you get it, the white over there on the left is 167. That's the freeway going over the top of Meeker Street. So if you can imagine coming toward downtown from Safeway on Meeker, you'd come through underneath the freeway, and as soon as you got out from underneath there, there'd be that roundabout. You could either continue north or head to the east, and vice versa. You're heading westbound, you get the roundabout instead of having to wait for that. You get to the stop sign, you're trying to get across the 4 lanes of traffic. We're narrowing it down to 1 lane in each direction, and then providing a roundabout. So no more waiting, looking both ways quickly and then gunning it to try and get onto Meeker. You actually just.
I never does that.
Yeah. Me neither. I've never done that. But it'd be a lot calmer area to drive through and to walk through.
Yeah, I think and then there's like a small house on the right-hand side. You think, right?
Yeah, the one that's, as you're coming toward downtown, and it's been if I remember right, it was an accounting firm for a while. I mean, there was a law office.
So would that be impacted by this year possible?
Nope, it stays there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And if you look, Rob, I'm really bad at this thing.
Okay.
Can you?
Top button.
Top button, thanks. That looks like the power button to me. There we go. So there's the house.
Right.
And then this is actually a 2-way bike path through here.
Okay.
So with the sidewalk next to it. So we end up with 1 less lane of traffic, but
Yeah.
we end up being able to provide room
That'd be
for
real nice.
walkers.
Speaking of roundabouts, I know I love a good roundabout, and I know that we've had the 116th and 248 4-way stop up on East Hill on the list. Is that
Still on the list.
still on the
Love to try and
list?
get that funded, but we haven't been able to find a grant agency that has a scoring criteria that fits that one very well. And as it
What
turns
makes
out,
that opportunity for roundabout different than like these opportunities?
this one, we've got transit, we've got development, we've got the tie-in with the Meeker corridor and the other related projects that we're doing out there. So those get everybody kind of going on when you start checking the boxes, so to speak.
Okay.
The roundabout at 116th and 248th, we think is a great location. It's going to be expensive because of the need for right-of-way in all 4 quadrants of that intersection in order to expand it just enough to get the roundabout in. And it's kind of out there on its own. We don't have a really significant accident issue there, so it's going to be just more of a general improvement. It may be something, if we'll try and get a grant opportunity that fits it. If we don't at some point, maybe we just do it as a capital project.
Councilman Fincher, you have a question?
No, a comment. Thank you,
Okay.
Council President. Just a reminder to Director Barron that I also think it'd be a great location up at Reith Road and Military, which turns into 259. It's another good location for a roundabout and would really help out traffic flow.
So noted.
Okay.
So, both great projects. 248th, 116th is one that I've been driving through for 20-something years that I would love to see. And also Reith and Military, I would love to see that one as well. Traffic engineer, I love roundabouts. Unfortunately, neither one of those locations fit into these 2 grant criteria because they don't directly serve, they're not either in or directly serve one of those, our manufacturing industrial center.
Gotcha.
But stay tuned for 248th. We'll see that here in a minute. Okay, PSRC preservation set aside. The purpose of this project is to preserve the existing transportation network. So this doesn't fund new construction. This is rehabilitation of pavements. 10% of the federal money that the PSRC receives is set aside for preservation projects. The streets that qualify are part of the federal functional classification system, and that was the colorful map that we talked about earlier. It does have a 13.5% minimum match, but the scoring criteria does favor a higher match amount. And in previous competitions, we've been limited to 2 applications per agency. So some potential locations or projects that qualify for the preservation. 212th, the Green River to 64th, 212 from 64th to 72nd, East Valley Highway from 196 to 212th, 228th Street from Russell Road to 64th, and then 228th from 64th to 72nd. Of those 5 projects, I just wanted to point out that the East Valley Highway 196 to 212th is designed and only needs construction funding, and so this may be a project that we can take advantage of some of that funding like we were successful with earlier this year if it becomes available. And then just the picture you're looking at on the right side, that's East Valley Highway, and that, you can see the ruts in the road that aren't supposed to be there full of water. Move on to Psrc Non-Motorized. Again, as with the preservation, the Psrc sets aside 10% of the federal funding they receive for non-motorized projects. And the funding is allocated among the 4 counties that make up the Psrc based on their relative population. And so Kent County being the largest, we get a larger proportional share. And also, like the preservation, 13.5% local match, but more points are awarded for higher match money. 2 potential projects we've identified are Meeker Street and 64th intersection, and Meeker Street to Kent Elementary to Washington Avenue. And again, trying to build on and continue that momentum on the Meeker corridor. And then a 3rd project that isn't in a map, but a new and enhanced pedestrian crossing project that would be in the manufacturing industrial center, or along the Interurban trail. That could also be a potential project with enhanced pedestrian crossings. And we're showing a rapid rectangular flashing beacon there in the lower thing, similar to what we just built on James at 2nd Avenue to help the residents of North Park get to Kent Station and into the transit center. So these are 3 potential projects for the non-motorized set aside. I guess I would at this point ask if anybody has any comments about preservation or non-motorized. Okay, thank you. 2022 Transportation Improvement Board Urban Arterial Program. The requirements for these projects are that the project must be consistent with state, regional, or local transportation plans. So it needs to be in our TI, or Transportation Improvement, our 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, our Transportation Master Plan, and also the regional and state plans. The streets must be federally functionally classified, and again, those are the bigger arterials that were shown on the map. But this program does require a local match of 20%. So 2 potential projects for the TAB urban arterials are the Meeker Street, Lincoln Avenue to the Union Pacific Railroad, and 116th at 248th. So this is a potential grant criteria, or a potential grant for that project up on the East Hill. I guess I could ask if there are any comments before we.
We good.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And then just another sketch of the Lincoln and Meeker roundabout, and another engineering drawing. It's kind of hard to find good pictures this time of year with the weather and the snow and things. The Transportation Improvement Board also has a sidewalk program. This is the one that funded the sidewalk in front of Hogan Park and in front of shops. So these projects must be transportation related, not recreation, so they don't apply to parks, but they do apply to our public streets. Streets must be federally functionally classified and a 20% local match. And 2 potential projects here are Russell Road, Meeker Street to Hogan Park. That was the section of Russell Road that we talked about earlier. And then potentially a sidewalk on the north side of Meeker Street from Kent Des Moines Road to Freger Road. And this would complete the connection from Kent Des Moines Road to Freger, and then it would connect Freger to the bridge across the river that parallels the Meeker Street Bridge. And so that would connect the Kent Des Moines area to the Meeker improvements. So. Same 2 projects again. The picture is Russell Road looking north from Meeker Street. 2022 WashDOT Highway Safety Improvement Program. So the requirements for this are the agencies must have a local road safety plan, and that's the engineering document that Eric Preston and Maria put together about every 18 months or so, where they analyze all the crashes in the city over a 5-year period and look for hotspots, intersections, road segments, different things like that, and propose improvements to as mitigation for those things. This grant is a little different from our typical grants in that the way we apply for it is we submit our local road safety plan to WashDOT, and then they go through that and they select the projects based on their benefit cost ratio and their funding, their ability to fund projects. So, and these grants do have a local match of $20,000. So this is one of those ones, again, where we don't have the ability to propose projects. But we have had some good projects funded out of that. I think last year, 2020 grant cycle, we got the compact roundabout at 108th and 264th funded. That's currently in design. And that's what I'm forgetting. The RFPs. Yeah, so the pedestrian enhanced crossings. They're also currently in design. So safe routes to school, criteria for this must be within 2 miles of a school. As we talked about earlier, for these projects to really be competitive, they need to be in the local road safety plan. Again, good and bad. We have not been successful with the safe routes to school grant in several years. Good in the fact that we don't have a crash history to put us up there, but bad in the fact that there are some improvements that we'd like to make, so we're looking for some other alternatives. Potential projects for the Safe Routes to School program. We will reevaluate the projects when the local road safety plan is completed. That should be about a month from now. But some potential projects are Meeker Street, Kent Elementary frontage, 3 enhanced crossings with rapid rectangular flashing beacons. One of them would be Neely O'Brien at 64th Avenue, and then 2 other locations on school walk routes. And then we've also talked about the potential of looking for sidewalk gaps near elementary schools. It could be another potential project. So.
One issue that was brought to council by email this week or last was the Kent Ridge along 124th.
They're runs in dialogue with them, right?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that would be something that we could consider.
Yes, in fact, that might actually be a good project.
Yeah.
So the Safe Routes to Schools is not constrained to any, like to an elementary school or any school. It is any primary school, so K through 12. So that could potentially be a good project for Safe Routes to School.
Mm-hmm.
The 2022 WashDOT Pedestrian and Bicycle Program. Again, to be competitive, the project should be in the local road safety plan. April did a bunch of analysis over the years and determined that the best location to be in a project would be $750,000 to $1.25 million project. And we found that with those 4 enhanced pedestrian crossings that we talked about earlier, that project was just over $1 million. So we fit right in there. Local match is $20,000. So a large project like that, that's a really good return. And the categories for the Ped Bike program include planning, design, and construction. So some potential projects for the 2022 pedestrian and bicycle program. 108th Panther Lake, that crossing of 108th Library, Meeker Street, Kent Elementary frontage, 116th at 223rd, a crossing here. There's a transit stop here. 116th is a busy arterial, and there are significant residential areas on both sides at 223rd. The nearest crossings north and south of there are at 240th and 216th, so pretty close to the middle on a long stretch that doesn't have any active pedestrian crossings. And then we've also got Russell Road from Meeker Street to Hogan Park. And a new project we haven't talked about yet is an enhanced crossing at Lake Meridian, Kent County Lake Meridian. Another project that we've identified, in addition to the ones that we've listed, is a project we spoke about earlier was new and enhanced pedestrian crossings in the downtown Meeker Interurban Trail area. That could be a potential project as well if we group together a couple of those crossings to get us into that good funding range. And then the picture you're looking at here, this is the interurban crossing at James Street. So at this point, I'd like to ask for feedback on these projects.
You have some question or no?
I'm just asking if the council has any feedback.
I think we're okay. They all much needed project, right? So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to prioritization, right? So I think you identified the one. I think the one with the library talked about with Panther Lake. So would that be by 208 in Benson? Because people cross all the way down. So I just wonder where would be the safe place to put it? Like you need multiple ones.
So 108 is a state highway, Benson is a state highway, so we've been working with the state. We actually put a fair amount of engineering and work with the state here, and if you look just where the library is, and I wish I had a map to show this, but just where the library is, if you go just south of there, there's a traffic island
Right.
that we could widen and create a median refuge, and that would
Okay.
have the benefit of slowing traffic down through there, but it would also be a signalized crossing, so traffic would stop and pedestrians would then cross the library. So when we call it library crossing, but it has additional benefits. You know, there's a bunch of residential on the west side, and you've got the stores on the east side, north of 208 and south of 208.
Yeah.
Isn't the problem a little bit further north of there, where the buses, I think there's bus stops on each side?
There are bus stops
To the
go forth on
north,
either
so-
side.
Yeah.
Those stops will be relocated as part of the Rapid Ride I in a couple of years, the Metro project. And those will be relocated to the intersection of 108 and 208.
Yeah.
The bus pullouts will remain for Kent School District. They actually use those pullouts. The kids don't cross the streets, but in the morning they use one, in the afternoon.
I just know that those two bus stops where they're located down the
Yes.
north side of the library is where I see people jetting across the city.
Yeah.
That and the apartments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's where I know that I've heard the most comments.
Yeah.
from is
exactly.
The parents of the apartments, not walking their kids to the intersection, but allowing them to cross.
Multiple lanes. Yeah.
Right, and our proposed crossing would be just north of the driveway for those apartments that are on the west side of the street.
North of-
Okay.
So 2022 WashDOT Ped and Bike Planning Grant. So there's a separate grant for planning efforts. And this is pretty much limited to, the criteria is that we would determine a pedestrian and/or bicycle connection that needs to be made without a project in mind. So actually, let me go back to this. So the two that we've identified and two that we've been talking about, Interurban Trail to Kent Station, that's been a project that's been discussed for, I think, several years now. And then a project that's came out of the Tmp process is a non-motorized connection between downtown and Earthworks Park. And since we don't have specific projects, an alignment or a project in mind, these two projects would be good candidates for the planning grant or the Ped Bike program. Almost done. 2022 WashDOT Railway Highway Crossing Program. And so a good candidate project for this is the Union Pacific gates at Willis Street. That's shown here in the picture. This project was identified as part of the quiet zone diagnostic, so this is a project that we need to do to get the quiet zone established. The program does fund design and construction with a 10% local match. So, Union Pacific's, I won't say estimate, maybe cost opinion, that's a fancy engineering word for a cost estimate that we're not going to stand behind, is about $400,000, so you can double that. So this is probably about an $800,000 project. So this would be a great project. In fact,
And the intent for this, during the quiet zone diagnostic, this was suggested that the city go for a grant here from staff from WashDOT. So we try and go for this grant, which would connect all of the new improvements along Willis Street. So we've got the roundabout, and then Terry Youngman and Parks has been working on the project for those gateway enhancements along Willis. So there's a nice new walking path through there. We would continue the walking path across this relocated signal, and then that would connect into the Naden Avenue 74th intersection improvements that we're working on there at the south end of the Naden property. It'll all tie together very nicely.
so the State Utilities and Transportation Commission also has a railway highway grade crossing program. This one's a little different. It is a smaller program for grade crossing improvements. The maximum grant award is $20,000, and then the local agency, the city in this case, would make up the difference. And one project that we identified in the Bnsf quiet zone diagnostic was a fence along the west side of Bnsf between Smith and Meeker Streets, along the park there. And this is one that we think would be a good fit for this. In fact, the Utilities and Transportation Commission actually called us and suggested that we apply for this grant at this location. So, and then $20,000 should cover a majority of the construction work for this section of fence. If you may recall that 3 years ago, we applied for one of these UTC grade crossing grants, and we did the pedestrian fences on Bnsf north of James and also on the UP on the south side of Willis Street. So, a couple of federal grants talked about the US DOT Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, the RAISE grants. These were formerly called Tiger grants, and these are grants that fund large multi-agency projects with regional benefits. So this is the kind of grant that like WashDOT would go for the 509 corridor, things like that. We are not sure we have a project that would fit this criteria. That would be a large multi-agency project. And then USDOT also has the Infrastructure for Rebuilding America, or INFRA grants. And these are also large multi-agency grants with regional benefits. But they are shifting the focus. About half the grant funding is now moving to rural areas that are historically underserved. So we won't have this same amount of funding available for those large projects in urban areas.
So for these two grants, as Rob pointed out, it'd be more like a SR 509 size project, and we'd come back to council maybe with a request to throw in a letter of support for a big project that we want to see continued, like the Gateway project.
Okay.
And then just a quick summary of our 2022 legislative requests.
No train horns.
I hear a lot of giggling. $20.5 million for the 228th corridor completion, and as the mayor mentioned earlier, $30 million for our quiet zones. And finally, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act.
Just reemphasize
A
it.
huge amount of transportation funding that is coming from the federal government. Unfortunately, there's still much that we don't know about this. We are certainly keeping track of it and looking for opportunities for Kent. And from what we've heard from our grant agencies, so TAB, Psrc, WashDOT, the ones that we've talked about previously, they think that they may see as much as 50% increase in funds for their existing programs. So that could work well for us, not only from projects we have on the contingency list, but also maybe additional projects for this year's grant cycle and continuing for the next 5 years. So as I mentioned, we're still evaluating those opportunities. And that concludes my presentation.
Wow, that's a lot.
It was.
I mean, there's a lot of projects, for 2018 and on up to what we're looking at for 2022. Good job by the team. Really appreciate that. Rob, good job. I'm just curious. I know April, she played a big role in this year. So did we ever fill that gap with her leaving?
The job posted on Monday, so if any of you happen to know any good just we're looking for one, transportation planners. We really, we have had 3 really good transportation planners in a row, and we're looking for a 4th.
Yep.
It happens.
And I know Kirk team played a role in that too. So, but really good job. Councilmember, any question, concern, thoughts, comments? Madam Mayor?
I just want to say thank you. The amount of work that goes into figuring out where the project should be, doing all of the pre-work, doing the application process, shepherding through that, the number of meetings that are required. And then when we get the money, the work starts there again. I could not be more proud on the regional stage of the work that you all are doing, that our teams in Public Works and in Economic and Community Development are doing when it comes to finding money for this community. I get the comments back from other cities like, how are you guys doing that, and how is this working, and get the pleasure of sitting on some of those decision panels after it's gone through all of the levels and it gets to us and it's like, what do you think? I just continue to be so proud and grateful for the work that you all are doing, because our residents are benefiting in a really big way. So thank you.
And you begin to see those things too, right? This Lolly project really come to fruition. So good job. Thank you. There's no other comments or questions from the council, we will take a break and we will return at 7 o'clock. Thank you, guys. Hey, Councilmember Fincher, I'm going to call you at 6:30, okay? Thank you.